All right then. Hello everyone. Welcome back to Unclench Your Jaw with Nemo. I am Nemo, strength and conditioning coach, somatic yin yoga therapist, mother of one, friend to many, secretly the most loved relative, and despite what my brother may or may not say, still very much the favorite sister. And actually, talking about strength and conditioning, we have a sevens tournament tomorrow. Come out and cheer for us, especially if you're in the coast in Kilifi. Come cheer us on. And I'm saying this as if this is going to be played today. Anyway, I will tell you the results next time. Next time I'm on here. Listen, I'm also the owner of more tattoos than sensible decisions, right? At this point, I've accepted that my body occasionally just tells me, Nimo, perhaps we've reached capacity. Well, my daughter does. She tells me the next, if I get any more tattoos, I'll have to start drawing on my face. Maybe a katia or whatever, but no. And I politely choose not to listen. Because so far, it's worked out reasonably well. Now, welcome to Unclench Your Jaw with Nemo, a podcast for your nervous system, place where we get curious about attachment, relationships, parenting, healing, trauma, resilience, and all the wonderfully messy things that make us human. Karibu. So, anyway, before we begin, I'd like you to do something for me. Just take a slow breath in and let an even slower breath out. And while you're listening, notice whether you're carrying tension anywhere, whether it's your shoulders, your chest, your jaw. There's no need to change anything just yet. I simply want you to notice. There's something we're going to come back to throughout today's conversation because I think noticing is where almost all the healing begins. Now, today's episode is called The Invisible Child. When most people hear that title, they picture a quiet child. The one sitting alone at the edge of the playground, the one who never volunteers to answer in class, never gets into trouble, but somehow manages to move through childhood without attracting very much attention. Sometimes that's exactly who the invisible child is, but I don't think that's the whole story. I've met invisible children who've become lawyers, teachers, rugby players, therapists, artists, and even business owners. I've met invisible children who are the funniest people in the room and others who seem to know everyone. They aren't invisible because people can't physically see them. They're invisible because somewhere along the way, their inner world stopped feeling like a place anyone was particularly interested in visiting. And that's a different thing, no? You see, I don't think children were born wondering whether they matter. They're born assuming they do. They run towards us with worms they found in the garden, drawings. Talking about running towards us with worms they found in the garden. My daughter came running to me with a snake she had found in the garden. Let me tell you, yeah, where, yeah, it was all, yeah, it was something, chaos in the house. The drawings that look vaguely like a giraffe. I keep talking about those drawings is because maybe they're familiar to me and my drawing. Um, but it could equally be a washing machine. You should see my drawing. Yeah, I am not that creative when it comes to fine art. Stories that take 17 unnecessary detours before reaching the point. That's me, as you may have noticed. And questions that no adult has ever thought to ask. Children arrive fascinated by the world and quietly convinced that we might be fascinated by the world too. But somewhere along the way, some children stop running towards us. And not because they stop wondering or because they stop feeling or even because they stopped imagining. They stop offering those parts of themselves. Because our curiosity has gone as well. Huh? And so that's where I'd like us to begin today's conversation. I'd like you to meet Amina. We've met many Aminas. Let's meet Amina again. Amina is 8 years old. And if you ask any adult in her life to describe her, the answer would probably sound like, Amina, she's no trouble at all. And every family seems to have a child like that. The child who gets themselves ready for school without being asked 300 times. The child who quietly does their homework while everyone else is arguing about whose turn it is to wash the dishes. The child who the adults describe as easy. It sounds like such a lovely compliment. She's independent, she's so mature, you never have to worry about her. And I've heard those sentences so many times. And every time I do, a small part of me wonders why we've decided those qualities are what we should be expecting from an 8-year-old child, right? Now, Amina lives in a loving home, and I want to make that clear because I think we've become a little too comfortable in believing that every childhood wound must begin with terrible parents, right? Life is usually so much more complicated. So anyway, Amina's mother works. Amina comes from a loving home. Amina's mom works long hours. Her father travels frequently for work. Her younger sister has asthma and seems permanently attached to a nebulizer, while her older brother has developed a remarkable talent for finding trouble before trouble has even found him. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen should be his anthem. Anyway, their house isn't unhappy. It's busy. Busy enough that everyone's attention is constantly being pulled to whatever feels most urgent. So anyway, one afternoon, Amina walks through the front door clutching a certificate. She's won a creative writing competition at school. And although she's not the sort of child who bursts into room demanding applause, she's quite thrilled. She finds her mom in the kitchen and says, "Mom, look what happened today." Her mom smiles, but she's on the phone. Do you recognize yourself, parents out there? And she says, "1 minute, sweetheart." Amina waits. Before that minute arrives, her little sister starts coughing in the next room. Her mother immediately puts the phone down and rushes to help. Amina follows her with the certificate still in her hands, but there's a nebulizer to set up, medication to find, and a frightened little girl who needs comforting. After a while, Amina just quietly folds the certificate, slips it back into her school bag, and goes to her bedroom. Nothing dramatic happens. If you'd been standing in that kitchen, you'd probably won't have noticed anything important. There are no tears, nobody argues, nobody says anything cruel. Later that evening, Amina's mum kisses her goodnight and she tells her she loves her. And that's why stories like this are so difficult. It's rarely one big moment. It's the accumulation of tiny moments, like increments, that slowly teach a child something about themselves. The next week, Amina wants to tell her father about a book she's reading. But he arrives home exhausted after traveling all day. Another afternoon, she wants to show her grandmother a picture she's drawn, but her grandmother is busy entertaining visitors. On another occasion, she begins telling a story about something funny that happened in school, only to stop halfway through because someone else needs the conversation more urgently. And none of these moments would worry you on their own. But together, though, they begin whispering the same message. Maybe, maybe this can wait. Now, children are extraordinary observers. We often talk about how children learn by listening, but I think they learn just as much by watching. They notice where attention goes. They notice who gets interrupted and who doesn't. They notice whose emotions fill a room and whose quietly disappear into the background. Amina never decided to become invisible. She simply adapts. She stops bringing every drawing to the kitchen. She stops telling every story that pops into her head. She still writes. She still imagines. She still dreams. Those parts of her don't disappear, they just become private. Now, adults will usually describe this as maturity, but I do wonder if sometimes if it's something else and not maturity. I'd like to ask you today's question, and I'd like you to resist the temptation to answer it too quickly. Who are you when nobody needs anything from you? Who are you when nobody needs anything from you? Not what do you do, not what responsibilities you carry, not who depends on you. Who are you? And I found it's a surprisingly difficult question, especially when I'm asking that to clients. Um, Many of them will say, I'm a doctor or I'm this, I'm this. They'll describe what they've done, but not who they are, right? People usually answer with roles. I'm a parent, I'm a manager, I'm a teacher, I'm a nurse, I'm a business owner, I'm a student. Some will tell me what they're good at, others will tell me what people come to them for, right? Very few people tell me about themselves, and I don't think that it's because they're being secretive. I just think many of us have never simply practiced finding out who we are. One of the things that fascinates me about childhood is that children don't discover themselves in isolation. We like to imagine identity as something hidden inside us, waiting patiently to be uncovered. But that's not really how it works, is it? We discover ourselves in relationships. That's how we discover, oh, I'm quite a nice person. Oh, I'm quite a mean person, whatever. We discover ourselves in relationships. So imagine a little boy who spends half an hour watching ants carry crumbs across a path. An adult kneels beside him and says, you really notice things other people miss. Or imagine a little girl who spends every afternoon making up elaborate stories. Her grandfather listens and says, you have an incredible imagination. Or a child who comforts another child who's crying and someone who gently remarks, you're very kind. Those may seem like ordinary moments, but they're anything but. Every time a trusted adult notices something about a child with genuine curiosity, they're quietly handing that child a tiny piece of themselves. Ah, I'm curious. Aha, I'm imaginative. Okay, I'm thoughtful. Yo, I'm funny, eh? I'm brave. Children borrow our eyes before they learn to see themselves. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about being human. Before we know ourselves, someone else is introducing us to us. But what happens if there aren't enough of those moments? And not because your parents didn't love you. Love isn't the question here. Curiosity is. What happens when nobody asks the second question? Tell me more. What did you think? What happened next? How did that feel? What happens when your inner world remains largely unexplored? I think something very quiet begins to happen. And instead of becoming familiar with yourself, you become exceptionally familiar with everyone else. You know when your mother is tired, you know when your father is stressed, you know when your partner is irritated even before they've said a word. You know exactly what your friends need, what your children need, and what everyone at work expects from you. Then one day somebody asks, what do you want? And the answer just doesn't come. And not because you're afraid to say it, because you've spent so many years looking outward that you've forgotten how to look inward. I don't think the invisible child grows into an adult constantly wondering whether they're loved. I think they grow into an adult quietly wondering, who am I when I'm not busy being who everyone else needs me to be? That's a question I'd like you to carry today. Not to answer, but just to carry. Because I have a feeling that by the end of this episode, you won't be asking, how do I become someone else? You'll be asking something much more gentler. What parts of me have been there all along, quietly waiting to be noticed? What parts of me have been there quietly waiting to be noticed? And this is absolutely the heart of the episode, right? Now, I'd like you to meet another girl. She's called Nyambura. Nyambura is 7 years old, and she has the kind of imagination that makes adults smile before they realize they should probably be writing things down. Nyambura sees stories everywhere. She doesn't just walk to school, she invents adventures on the way there. The cracks in the pavement become rivers. The jacaranda tree outside the neighbor's gate is home to a family of owls who hold meetings every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. A cloud drifting lazily across the sky isn't just a cloud, it's a giant sheep that has escaped from a farmer somewhere who's looking to make some chops. Lamb chops. I'm drooling now. Anyway, children are wonderfully odd like that. Have you ever noticed that adults spend years trying to teach children about reality and then spend thousands of shillings on retreats trying to recover the imagination they talked them out of? Nyambura loves drawing almost as much as she loves making up stories. Every afternoon, she spreads her pencils across the sitting room floor and disappears into a different world. It's a different world. Ah, from where you come from. Okay, I know I can't sing. You don't have to write in and tell me that, but I will keep singing. Anyway, if you look over her shoulder, right, you notice that almost every picture contains the same enormous tree. Sometimes it's in the middle of the village, sometimes it's beside a river. Once she drew it growing out of the roof of a school because, according to Nyambura, trees shouldn't have to stay outside all the time. Remember, she's got an active imagination. Now, she has thought about this tree more than most adults have thought about their careers. It isn't just a tree, it's where the children in her stories go when they're sad. It's where people sit when they have had an argument. It's where old people tell stories, where birds build nests, and where nobody is ever told that they're asking too many questions. The tree listens. Anyway, one afternoon, Nyambura's mum comes home from work while Nyambura is adding the final touches to another drawing. She hears the front door open and immediately jumps to her feet, picture in hand. Mum, look what I've drawn. Her mum walks in balancing shopping bags, searching for keys, trying to answer a phone call, all these things that are distracting. And she says, "What is it, sweetheart?" Not rudely, just, what is it? What? Like we ask, what is it, sweetheart? Well, we're in the middle of a million other things. So Nyambura says, "I finished the tree." And her mum says, "That's lovely." She smiles, kisses Nyambura on the forehead, and walks into the kitchen. That's it. No shouting, no rejection, just a mum trying to juggle six things at once. Nyambura stands in the doorway for another few seconds, looking first towards the kitchen and then down at the picture. She waits just in case her mum comes back to ask about it. She doesn't. Eventually, Nyambura just walks back to the sitting room, sits cross-legged on the floor quietly, and continues coloring. The next week, she draws another picture. This time, the tree is surrounded by children. One of them is crying, another is reading a book, and a girl is talking to the tree while holding what appears to be a pet crocodile. I'm choosing to believe the crocodile is friendly because I don't want to spend the rest of the episode worrying about fictional children being eaten by and the crocodile. I told you I'm going to sing. Anyway, that evening, Nyambura's father comes home. "Dad, can I show you something?" He looks over from the newspaper. That's beautiful. "What do you think they're doing?" Nyambura asks. His dad asks, "Who?" Nyambura says, "The children." He glances back at the picture and says, "I don't know, sweetheart." Then the phone rings. Again, life moves on. Here's what I find so interesting about stories like Nyambura. Again, nothing terrible has happened. If her parents were listening to this podcast, they'd probably be horrified to think that they were the parents in the story. They love their daughter deeply. They feed her, they hug her, they read bedtime stories, they cheer at school concerts, and kiss scraped knees. Love is not absent. Attention simply keeps being interrupted, and the children don't experience life as isolated moments, they experience patterns. By the time Nyambura is 8, she's still drawing. She just isn't showing anyone anymore. Nobody tells her to stop. No one laughed at her drawing. No one told her stories are silly. She just simply began keeping them for herself. Sometimes people imagine that children lose confidence because someone tore them down. Sometimes confidence just quietly disappears because nobody climbs up beside them. Right? One Monday morning, there's a new teacher at Nyambura school. Let's call her Miss Wambui. She's teaching English for the term while another teacher is on maternity leave. She has a sort of laugh that fills a classroom and slightly chaotic energy of someone who always has at least 4 pens in her pocket but can never find one when she needs it. So one afternoon, she asked the class to write about a place where they feel safe. Most kids write about home, one writes about the grandmother's farm, another one talks about the rugby pitch. Nyambura writes about the tree. She writes for so long that she doesn't even hear the bell. When the classroom empties, Miss Wambui walks over to her desk and she says, Nyambura, you're still writing. Nyambura looks up surprised. Oh, people have gone. And Miss Wambui says, yes, but may I read your story? Nyambura hesitates for a moment before handing over the exercise book. Miss Wambui, she hands it over. Miss Wambui reads it quietly. She doesn't rush. She doesn't skim. She reads every word. And after a few minutes, she looks up and smiles. And she says to Nyambura, I have a question, Nyambura. Nyambura waits. Tell me about the tree. Just that. Tell me about the tree. Nyambura blinks because no one has ever asked her that before. Not because people don't care, but nobody has been curious enough to ask her the second question. So Nyambura begins talking. The tree is older than everyone in the village, she says. It remembers all the stories people have forgotten. Miss Wambui nods. What else? The children tell its secrets because trees don't interrupt. Miss Wambui says, I like that. Why don't they interrupt? Nyambura thinks for a moment because listening is their job. Miss Wambui smiles again and she asks, do you think the tree ever gets tired? Now, this question catches Nyambura completely off guard because she spent years thinking about this, the children, the stories, the birds, the seasons. Never once has she wondered about the tree. So she says, I don't know. Miss Wambui closes the exercise book and hands it back to her and says, I wonder. And that's all she says. I wonder. That evening, Nyambura goes home and draws the tree again. And for the first time, she adds another tree beside it, smaller, but closer, almost leaning towards the first one. She doesn't know why. It just feels right. Years later, she'll remember that drawing, not because of the trees, but because of the question, tell me about the tree. You see, I don't think Miss Wambui changed Nyambura's life because she praised her writing. I think she changed something because she became interested in Nyambura's inner world. She didn't say, well done. She didn't say, you're so talented. She didn't even say, that's a lovely story. She just wanted to know more. Children know the difference. Praise is lovely and all that. Curiosity, on the other hand, feels like being seen. And perhaps that's what the invisible child, or the invisible children, child, have been longing for all along. Not applause, not perfection, just someone who pauses long enough to say, tell me more. Take a slow breath. Notice your shoulders. Notice your breath. And unclench your jaw. Now, I want us to go back to Miss Wambui for a moment because I think she did something extraordinary. Even though on the surface, it looks incredibly ordinary. She asked one question. Tell me about the tree. That's it. No therapy, no grand speech, no life-changing advice, just 4 words and the willingness to stay long enough to hear the answer. I don't think we appreciate just how powerful that can be. We're often taught that children need praise to build confidence. Tell them they're clever. Tell them they're talented. Tell that little child of yours they've done a really good job. And praise has its place. But I also wonder if curiosity is even more powerful. Think about the difference between someone saying, "Oh, that's a lovely drawing," and someone saying, "Tell me about your drawing." One ends the conversation, the other one begins it. One evaluates, the other one explores. One tells the child what you think, the other tells the child that what they think matters. I don't know about you, but when I think back to the adults who had the biggest influence on my life, it isn't necessarily the ones who praised me the most. It's the ones who made me feel interesting. The ones who asked another question. The ones who listened as though what I was saying mattered. And I will tell you, I was a chatterbox. I think at one point I was called radio. Radio. Now, some of you might be too young to understand what a radio is, but it used to play music and it's think of a TV or a laptop, but without the screen. That's a radio. Now, I think children are born expecting that kind of curiosity. Have you ever noticed how many times a child will tell you, "Watch me, look at me, see me, watch me jump, watch me run, look at me spinning. Ah, yeah, see me climbing this tree. Look at me dancing." I remember my niece loved dancing. I'm not sure how much she loves dancing now, or if she'd ask us to look at her dancing before, but the world had to stop for her to show us her dancing. Same thing as my daughter at that age. Everything had to stop at a dance that she had just learned. Actually, when they were younger, so my daughter has um two very close friends that she's grown up with. And when they were younger, we used to have not even dancing competitions. We just put music on and just dance like mad people. And I remember so well. I still have the videos and I keep sending them to them. They're now, okay, the youngest one is my daughter who is now 15. The others are 19 and one's turning 18. And I keep sending them these videos of them dancing like little lunatics. Love it. Right? And I don't think they're looking for applause. They were looking for connection. And that's what we did. We connected in that dancing, right? Because I think that can you look at me, please watch me doing this dance, look at me climb this tree, is them saying, can I share this moment with you? Can you see me while I experience this moment? And that's a very different request. As adults, we often hear, look at me. What the child, I think, is really asking is, will you join me? Right? Now, there's a lovely idea in developmental psychology that says we discover ourselves through being reflected by other people. Before we know that we're frightened, somebody notices our fear. Before we know that we're excited, someone smiles at our excitement. Before we know that we're proud, someone celebrates with us. Slowly, over the hundreds and thousands of ordinary moments, we begin to build a picture of who we are. I often describe it like learning to recognize your own face. Imagine you'd never seen a mirror. You could touch your nose, you could feel your eyes. You might know you had hair because someone brushed it, but would you really know what you look like? Probably not. You need a reflection. Our emotional lives develop in much the same way. Children borrow other people's eyes before they learn to see themselves. I know I said that earlier, but I think it's worth saying it again because it's the heartbeat of this entire episode. And I know I talked about the heartbeat before, but stay with me. Stay with me. Children borrow our eyes before they learn to see themselves. When someone repeatedly notices your delight, you begin recognizing delight in yourself. When someone notices your sadness, you slowly learn what sadness feels like. When someone becomes curious about your imagination, you begin believing your imagination is worth exploring. It's like a little it's a little like somebody handing you tiny pieces of a jigsaw puzzle over many years. One piece says you're thoughtful, another piece says you've got a wonderful sense of humor, Another says you notice details. Another one says you're incredibly gentle with animals. Eventually, those little pieces, they begin to fit together. And without even realizing it, you started answering one of life's biggest questions: who am I? Now imagine growing up without enough of those moments. Again, I want to be really careful here because it isn't about blaming parents. Sometimes parents are working two jobs, sometimes they're grieving, other times they're caring for elderly parents, sometimes they're just trying to survive financially as we are in this economy. Sometimes they themselves grew up in homes where nobody asked about their feelings or imaginations or inner worlds, right? You can't pass on something you were never given. You cannot pass on something you were never given. That's why I have so much compassion for parents. Most of them are doing the very best they can with the emotional language they inherited. But the child's nervous system doesn't know intention. It learns from experience. If nobody consistently reflects your inner world back to you, your attention begins traveling somewhere else. That somewhere else is outward. You become wonderfully skilled at reading other people. You know when mom is tired before she says she's tired. You know when dad has had a difficult day because of the way he closes the front door. You know which sibling needs comforting. You know when your teacher is in a bad mood before the register is even finished. Your nervous system becomes incredibly efficient at scanning other people. And it's not because you're weak, it's because your nervous system is doing exactly what nervous systems evolved to do. They're constantly asking one question: am I safe? Safety, especially as children, depends almost entirely on the people around us. So our brains become experts at reading people's faces, reading people's body language, tiny shifts in mood. Long before we're consciously aware of it, our bodies are gathering information. Is mom stressed? Is dad angry? Should I wait before asking for money? Should I make myself smaller because they're in a bad mood today? Should I help? Should I disappear into my room for a while? We don't sit there thinking these thoughts logically. Our nervous system simply learns them. The problem is that if your attention spends years traveling outwards, it becomes much harder to notice what's happening in here. I often see this a lot in my work. I'll ask someone a very simple question: what are you feeling? They'll tell me what happened. And I normally say, I understand what happened. I'll gently ask again, but what are you feeling? Then they'll explain what the other person was probably thinking. Again, very interesting, but what are you feeling? Other times it's just a very long silence, and not because they're avoiding the question, but because they genuinely don't know. And I believe them. We become so used to telling people to get in touch with your feelings that sometimes we forget how difficult that can be if nobody helped you to build that relationship in the first place, right? It's a bit like asking someone to navigate a city they've never visited before without giving them a map. The feelings are there, the streets exist, they just don't know where they are. One of the things I love about somatic work is that it gives us another doorway into ourselves. Sometimes words come later. Sometimes we begin with the body. What happens in your chest when someone criticizes you? What happens in your stomach when someone asks too much of you? What happens in your shoulders when you're carrying everyone else's worries? What happens to your breathing when you're finally alone? The body has often been speaking for years. We've simply become more fluent in everybody else's language than our own. And perhaps that's why I keep asking you to notice your shoulders, your breath, and your jaw. Not because it's not because that I'm obsessed with these body parts or that they possess magical healing. Although, if my jaw could start paying my mortgage, I would be delighted. I ask because every time you pause to notice yourself, you're gently turning your attention home. You're practicing something the invisible child may never have had the opportunity to practice. You're becoming curious about your own experience. You're not fixing it, you're not analyzing, you're simply noticing it. And I think that's what Miss Wambui offered Nyambura. She didn't tell her what the tree meant, she didn't interpret the story. She didn't say, yes, clearly this represents your unmet emotional needs. And please don't do that to children or adults for that matter. Instead, she asked a question: tell me about the tree. And then she listened. Curiosity creates space, judgment closes it. Think about how often we do that to ourselves. I'm so dramatic. I'm so sensitive. I keep overreacting. Or I'm lazy or I'm selfish. Those are judgments. Curiosity sounds very different. I wonder why that upset me. I wonder why my body tightened when they said that. I wonder why I always say yes before I've thought about it. I wonder why I suddenly feel lighter when the plans were cancelled. Can you hear the difference? Judgment rushes to conclusions, curiosity stays in the conversation. And perhaps that's what healing really is, not becoming somebody new, just learning to stay in a conversation with yourself for long enough that you begin to recognize the person who has always been there. Take a slow breath, notice your shoulders, notice your breath, unclench your jaw. Now, Daniel left our session with one sentence echoing in his mind. What do you enjoy? It sounds like an ordinary question, right? The kind of question you'd ask on a first date or during one of those team building exercises at work where everyone is trying very hard to look enthusiastic while secretly wondering whether there are going to be any mandazis or mahamris being served. But for Daniel, it wasn't an ordinary question. It stayed with him because he realized he had spent years answering a different one. What does everybody else need? Once he noticed it, he couldn't unsee it. He noticed that every decision started with someone else. When his wife asked what they should have for dinner, he immediately thought about what the children liked. When work was planning annual leave, he found himself checking everyone else's calendars before asking himself whether he even wanted time off. At the supermarket, he automatically reaches for the coffee his wife prefers, the cereal his son likes, the yogurt his daughter has always asked for. Halfway through the shop, he stops himself and realizes there wasn't a single thing in the trolley that he had consciously chosen for himself. Now, before anyone listening decides Daniel needs to throw away the shopping trolley and drive dramatically into the sunset, that's not the point. The point isn't becoming selfish. The point is about becoming visible, and there's a difference. The invisible child often believes the opposite of visibility is selfishness. If I think about myself, I'm selfish. I've got preferences. I'm difficult. If I say no, I'm letting people down. Am I though? But healthy visibility isn't demanding what the world it isn't demanding that the world revolves around you. Wait. Is there going to be a podcast where my Kikuyuness doesn't come out? And and what's so funny is I remember my mom used to tell us, I don't even know why you call yourselves Kikuyu. You're not full Kikuyu. You're mongrels. You've got so many different tribes in you. Anyway, higher. Let's try this again. Visibility isn't demanding that the world revolves around you. It's remembering that you're allowed to exist in it. And I wonder how many times you've apologized this week, not because you'd actually done something wrong, but because someone bumped into you. Someone bumps into you, say, "Oh, I'm sorry." You ask a question and you say, I'm sorry, I just need to ask. Or you squeeze past someone in a supermarket aisle and you're like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Now, I'll tell you something. British people have made apologizing into an Olympic sport, and I think many Kenyans aren't far behind. We apologize for the weather. We apologize because someone else is late. If a pigeon flew into me tomorrow, I think my first instinct would be to apologize to the pigeon. Why? Because many of us have quietly learned that taking up as little space as possible feels safe. The invisible child often becomes an invisible adult in wonderfully polite ways. I'm sorry, only if that's okay. I don't mind. No, whatever works for everyone else. I'll manage. Those sentences sound generous. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're survival. So today, I don't want to give you homework. You know me well enough by now to know I'm not particularly interested in making you fill 27 journal prompts before next Tuesday. I'd rather you noticed one thing, just one. Tomorrow morning, before your day begins, ask. I've been interrupted. Sorry, my phone was ringing and it threw me off my flow. Hiya, tomorrow morning, before your day begins, asking things of you, ask yourself a very small question. What would make today feel 5% kinder? Not perfect, not life changing, not even 50%, just 5%. And maybe it's drinking your tea while it's still hot. Maybe it's sitting outside for 10 minutes. Maybe it's saying no to one thing. Maybe it's calling that friend who you've been saying you're going to call and you haven't. Maybe it's taking a longer route home because you enjoy looking at the trees. Or maybe instead listening to music instead of listening to news. Or dancing while nobody's watching. Kwanzaa dancing while nobody's watching. That one is fun. Remember, play isn't just for children. Remember we spoke about play. Play is good for adults as well. It's one of the ways the nervous system remembers safety. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to become good at it. You just have to allow it. It's simple. Just allow it. Then later in the day, I'd like you to notice something else. Pay attention to the moments your body changes, not dramatically, just quietly. When do your shoulders soften? When do you breathe out without realizing you've been holding your breath? When do you lose track of time? Who are you? Who are you with, even? Someone needs me urgently. No, listen, who are you with when your laugh comes easily? What conversation makes you lean forward instead of checking the time? These are not random moments, they're breadcrumbs, right? Your nervous system is constantly telling you where it feels more like itself. We're simply learning how to listen. And this is another reason I love somatic work so much. Your body rarely lies to you. I keep telling people your body rarely lies to you. Your mind can con you big time that you're fine. Your shoulders have other opinions. Your jaw has been trying to write you a strongly worded letter for months. Your stomach has been busy filing complaints since 2018. The body is remarkably patient. It just keeps sending message, not to punish you, but to find you. So if you recognize yourself in Daniel or Amina or Nyambura today, I'd like you to hear this. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're not failing at adulthood. You're simply becoming very, very good at surviving. Um, Now we're learning something different. We're learning how to notice ourselves. And I keep thinking about Nyambura's tree, and not because I think the tree was magical, although I do like the idea of a tree that listens to everyone's stories. I keep thinking about it because Miss Nyambura never told Nyambura, Miss Wambui, sorry, never told Nyambura what the tree meant. She never interpreted. She never announced, yes, the tree clearly represents your attachment wounds. Thank goodness for that. Instead, she became curious. She asked, tell me about the tree. I think that's one of the most generous questions another human being can ask, not because of the tree, but because of the hidden message, that hidden question inside the other one. Tell me about you. Inside that, um, tell me about the tree, is a hidden is another hidden question, which is tell me about you. And I wonder what would happen if we asked ourselves that question, sorry, a little more often. Not what's wrong with me, not why can't I get my life together, not why am I like this, but tell me about you. Tell me what makes you come alive. Tell me what makes your shoulders drop. Tell me what makes you laugh until your stomach hurts and your ribs hurt. Tell me what you've quietly stopped doing because life became busy. Tell me what fascinated you as a child or what you've been pretending not to care about. Tell me what you've missed. Because I have a feeling that many invisible children didn't lose themselves. I think they simply stopped introducing themselves to the world. And perhaps somewhere inside you, that child is still waiting with a drawing in their hands, still hoping someone might stop long enough to ask another question. And maybe today that person can be you, not with judgment, but with curiosity. You don't have to discover your entire identity this week. Please don't put it on your to-do list between paying the electricity bills and then trying to find time to go to your supermarket to buy washing powder. Find your authentic self seems very wildly ambitious. Start smaller. Notice one preference, one feeling, one moment of joy, one tiny spark of curiosity. That's enough. That's enough. Because identity isn't something we suddenly discover one Tuesday afternoon. It's something we slowly remember. One moment at a time, one question at a time, one gentle act of paying attention at a time. So if you do that, it's the beginning of the journey. I'd like to leave you with the same invitation Miss Wamboy gave Nyambura all those years ago, not because I want you to find a tree, but because I want you to find yourself. Tell me about you. Tell me about you. See what comes. If the answer is I don't know, that's okay. Stay with it. Don't rush to fill the silence. I don't know is not failure. It's the beginning of curiosity. And curiosity is where the healing begins. So take a slow breath. Notice your shoulders. Notice your breath. Unclench your jaw. Less judgment, more curiosity. Thank you for spending this time with me today. And if this episode stirred something in you, I hope you'll be gentler with yourself over the next few days. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to fix your childhood before breakfast tomorrow, right? Just notice, because every time you notice yourself without judgment, you're doing something the invisible child may not have experienced often enough. You're saying, I see you. And sometimes that's where the healing begins. But before I do leave you, here's a finishing question. What part of you has been quietly waiting for you to become curious enough to notice it? What part of you has been quietly waiting, hapo in the side wings, just waiting for you to become curious enough to notice it? Carry that question with you this week. I'm Nimo. This has been Unclench Your Jaw with Nimo, a podcast for your nervous system. And until next time, be gentle with yourself and do not forget to unclench your jaw. Asanteni.